Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to Todd's podcast. We have an exciting guest today, if you're in the real estate world. Tim Weisheyer, pronouncing that correct?
Pretty close.
Pretty close? How bad was I?
You were barely off. Good job, my friend.
Okay. Tim is the president of the Florida Realtors for the year 2025. You'll be installed in a week or two. But you kind of take over January 1.
Yes, sir.
So you're really running the association. You were elected to the leadership team in 2020. And the Florida Realtors, they're the largest state realtor organization in the country. We used to be third or fourth. And
Right.
I guess as migration has hit and we've had people escaping from other states, and as our economy has been booming, we've continued to grow. I know sitting on the finance committee, I look at our membership numbers, and the day I left office, you hate when people say that, we were like 20 people shy of 80,000.
Right.
And now we're just an astronomical number of 243-ish,
Yes,
give or
sir.
take
Yep.
5,000.
Exactly.
The Florida Realtors are the voice of real estate in the real estate industry, and we share a common goal of championing. It's easy for you to say, Eli. The protection of private property rights, and while we still keep a very close eye on the shaping of legislation each year, and the impact that that has on property owners. And at the Florida Association, we really focus at Tallahassee, but we also have influence at the National Association when we go to D.C. So we do have that. Tim, I'm looking forward to your year being president. I hope you are. It'll be a great year for you. You're originally from Bayshore, New York.
Yes, sir.
Is that Long Island?
It is, yes, sir.
So when I say originally, you were born there, but you've been down here most of your, if not all, you were baby down here.
That's right. Yeah, I grew up in Osceola County. So
Okay.
that's really, I call Florida home.
You live over in the Lake Nona area.
Yes, sir.
So I appreciate you coming over, making the trek over. Tell us a little bit about your brokerage, how your office is set up, how big it is. Is it a family business or, tell us a little bit about what your company is.
Sure. First of all, thanks for being here. And honestly, thank you for your leadership and service at Florida Realtors. You're one of the people that myself and so many others have looked up to and kind of modeled our leadership after in some ways, and probably not in some ways also, by the way.
It's a very low bar to step over when you say that.
I wasn't going to say that, but you could say it all you want. But no, truly, thanks for your leadership and also your impact on real estate as a whole. Really proud of what you and your partners have built with your company. That said, real estate is always what I knew I was going to do. So from a very young age, everyone in my family would tell you I was going to end up in business. I didn't know it was going to be real estate. I have two very unique stories I normally tell about markers for me that kind of pointed me towards real estate. I won't necessarily bore you with those today, but I was young, actually started college, was going to school for business, knew I was going to go into real estate, and ultimately left college to start my real estate career. Worked for a small independent brokerage originally. I'm a hard worker by nature, and so I kind of really leaned into the idea of outworking everyone. So I got in an hour before everybody, took a 5 or 10 minute lunch instead of an hour lunch, stayed an hour later than everybody, became a top producer in my company. From there, decided to become, or was asked to be the leader and manager of the company. Grew that company to 3 offices, about 40 to 50 agents, about 30 staff. We had about 1,300 doors that we were managing at the time as well. Exited that company to start my own brokerage.
You had 30 staff with 40 to 50 agents?
Yeah.
That's an incredible ratio.
Yeah, well, a lot of it was administrative stuff. We also had community association management, property management, and all those things. So they were managing that side of the house more so than the sales side. From that, stepped out, launched my own brokerages. I own 2 brokerages independent, and then I'm a partner in another brokerage I'll share with you as well. So Dream Builders Realty is one of our companies. That's the one that I started many years ago. It's a smaller, more boutique brokerage. We tend to range somewhere between 25 and 40 agents in that company at any time. Very traditional real estate brokerage. Always been independent, never franchised or anything like that. Always created everything on my own. I always knew for myself I was going to move through real estate in a couple of ways. I started in residential, wanted to move into commercial, so studied and practiced that, took CCM classes, so on and so forth, RLI and all those others. And then ultimately what I want to do is move into development. So I own Dream Builders Realty, independent residential brokerage. I own DBR Commercial Real Estate, which is an independent commercial brokerage in Celebration, Florida. Dream Builders is in Kissimmee. And then I'm a partner in a group called 37 Capital Partners, where we buy and develop real estate all around Central Florida, self-storage units, Starbucks, Wendy's, you name it, all the normal stuff that people are
What do you like doing best?
Really, I like the development the most, to be honest with you. I'm naturally a strategic thinker and planner. I like figuring out things. I'm really good at land use and entitlements and kind of going in and finding undervalued real estate and figuring out how to get the entitlements in place so we can ultimately bring to the market something that is profitable.
Right.
So I really enjoy that work.
I know, a lot of it is local government. You're dependent on them and the people that are in there. And when I served on our county commission, we were very pro-growth. We were coming out of one of the worst recessions ever of 2009, 2010, and no one was working. We were trying to figure out what we had to do to get people going again. And you build a house, you employ a whole bunch of people, from the sod layers to the painters to the drywall to the concrete, the asphalt, plumber, you name it.
Right.
And our county commission seems to have shifted a little bit more to being a little more skeptical on residential development, but still very pro-business and commercial development.
Right.
What's your county like? Are y'all struggling with kind of the same attitude's the wrong way, but approach to governance about, hey, let's be a little more particular about the residential side?
Yeah, for sure. In fact, it's really become problematic. I mean, when I say county, in this case, I'm referring to Osceola.
Correct.
Osceola's grown so much. And even when I was elected to the school board, we may talk about keeping up with that growth was always a difficult thing. But one of the things I always try to get cities and counties to understand as I'm working with them is, in order to get commercial development, you need residential. You need rooftops. Otherwise, it doesn't happen. In order to get the ad valorem taxes you need, or the impact fee revenue you need to build the infrastructure, you need both of those pieces. And the market really is symbiotic.
Well, residential is almost a lost leader, is how I looked at it. Is you don't really, sorry, I'm jumping in.
No, you're fine.
But, on the commercial, they don't use a whole lot of police, fire, or ambulance, first responders, but the residential folks do. So,
yeah.
The commercial is so vitally important, but you're right. If you don't have rooftops, Publix doesn't come in, the drugstores don't come in, you name it, they don't come in. The restaurants don't come in for quality of life.
Yeah, one of the stories I tell sometimes is we had 26 acres of land on 192 in St. Cloud. Obviously, I know you know that market well. We had put our sign on it to get ready to broker it as a family asset, and I got a bunch of calls, and people were saying, tell me you're not building more residential on this. And I said, well, we don't know exactly what it will be, but the truth of it is this is commercial property. It's on a signal. It's a corner. It's on 192. And I said, but it could be a mixed-use development, which is actually what it ended up being. And I said, well, you don't want residential. What do you want? And the lady that I was on the phone with, she said, I want a super target. I said, well, let me tell you this. You don't get a super target unless you get more residential. She's like, well, traffic is so bad. And I said, well, you don't alleviate traffic unless you have the revenue to do it, which is going to come from more development. Right. So I know what you're saying, but you really have to understand how the ecosystem works. That said, to the point about land use and working with the county or the cities, there is an aversion right now to approving more mass scale developments, and certainly the community as a whole tends to react unfavorably when they hear that a new development is coming in. And obviously in Osceola, there's always new developments coming online. My job and a lot of what I try to do is just to keep a strong relationship with the managers, with the electeds, and make sure they understand that you want to be really careful how you squeeze this balloon, because if you squeeze it too hard at one end, it just expands at the other, and you're creating another problem that you're going to try to solve down the road. And as a former elected and a county commissioner, you know that all too well.
Yeah. I mean, you look at 417 on the south side, from the airport coming back to I-4, that used to be nothing out there. Nothing.
Right.
Other than an exit or two to get you into Kissimmee. And now, my gosh, it just blows your mind.
Yeah.
What all they're doing. And Lake Nona has exploded and all of that.
Well, let me say this real quick. It's just a funny little inside story. My brother lives in Nashville, grew up in Kissimmee as well. And he came into my house in Nona when I had just built it. And he's like, where are we? And I said, Lake Nona. And he's like, where is Lake Nona? And I said, Narcoossee Road. He goes, Narcoossee Road? He goes, this was nothing but ranches and mobile homes. I said, a lot has changed since you moved. He used to live in Atlanta, but now Nashville. I said, a lot has changed since you left the state of Florida. So yeah, that whole area is totally different.
And that is example one of why buying real estate in Florida is just almost always a good investment.
Amen.
If you can hang on to it long enough, that will come.
Yeah.
You mentioned your time on the school board. When were you elected? Why did you decide to run? Because I never wanted to be on our school board. It is such an emotional job on the commission side, county commission side. You're dealing with business. You're not dealing with, hey, my kid doesn't want to wear this uniform, or the curriculum, or what all they're dealing with today. That was just an incredible, gutsy move, in my opinion, to run for school board. But it is so important.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mean parents get emotional about their kids sometime?
Every time.
Yeah. So I ran in, officially I was elected in 2012 is when I took office, decided to run in 2010. I had been asked for about a decade before to run, and I always said no. I always said, let somebody else do it. I'll support from the background. And it wasn't that I was adverse to doing it. I'm just not someone who really pursues positions or titles. I just want impact, right? But then there came a point to your question about why did I run? Our school board was incredibly dysfunctional, incredibly. And so there was kind of an outcry from the community, and they continued to come to me and said, why aren't you running? You can fix this. You're the one. And so I finally decided to run. I ran against the incumbent, won obviously overwhelmingly.
I ran against an incumbent too.
Yeah. I mean, it ended up taking like 68% of the vote or something. I don't even remember. But ran with that. The first 2 years, I just had to rebuild culture. I mean, everything had eroded. It was really bad. So why did I run? Because I knew that it was an important institution in our community. I coined a phrase back then that education is a precursor to economic development. If the county commission, the city council, city commission, or otherwise want to be able to attract businesses, jobs, and growth and economic lift, you have to have a talent pipeline. You have to have a good education system. I understood not only was the education system important for students and families, but it was important for the community and the economic viability of the community that I call home. So that was a big driver for me. And then from there, I just really focused a lot on how are we creating academics and programming they're going to truly meet the needs in the marketplace. So I'll give you an example. We reversed engineered schooling, where instead of saying, hey, we built a school, kids are going to come, and now what programs are we going to put in it? Every school that we built while I was on the school board, we went to the marketplace first and said, where are the jobs? What's coming? What's the next market? What's emerging? And then we designed programs, curriculum around that. And then we
like an
built
academy
schools.
Almost.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, and in fact, one of my personal projects that I was hyper invested in, and I ran on the idea that we create would be a school for business. So there's now a business academy in Osceola County that has the potential to continue to scale, where we're now teaching young entrepreneurs how to learn, understand, and create businesses right in the community.
How big was your school board? 5 or 7?
It's 5-member board.
5. I think Polk County 7, and the Lakeland City Commission is 7. Our county commission was 5. I think 5's the appropriate number.
Yeah.
You get too many, and that's 2 more attitudes and egos that you have to deal with. And I mean, I never had one, but I know that other people did. And
well, and you may know, I serve as chairman of the Greater Orlando Aviation Authority, and we have a 7-member board. So I understand the distinction between working with a 5-member board and a 7-member board. So.
Is that board public?
It is.
There is a difference between being in a public board and being on a private board.
Yeah, no, it's 100% public. It's obviously it's a gubernatorial appointment, so I'm there on behalf of the governor. 7-member board, the mayor of Orange County, mayor of Orlando sit on the board with me, and then 5 gubernatorial appointees, all under sunshine and everything just like you and I are used to.
How did you like being in the sunshine, being, meetings are in public? It does typically challenge you of how you say things and saying things and just meeting with other commissioners, because you and I, we may be doing a real estate deal and we'll just sit down and talk it out and say, how do we get this thing across the finish line? But you're not supposed to do that on the public side. Did you like that, or would you say, hey, it is what it is and I'll work around it or I'll deal with it?
Yeah, I just embrace the fact that it does exist. I think the spirit of the Sunshine Law is good, right? What it wants to achieve for the residents to ensure that there's not any type of misappropriate actions or behavior taking place. When you think about it we're business people. When you think about it from a business standpoint, it certainly impedes progress and opportunity. The legislature obviously can sit and talk with each other all they want, which is great, and they can figure out how they're going to work their deals and who's going to negotiate and give on what piece, where a school board, a county commission, or otherwise we're not able to. I didn't mind it at all. The truth of it is, being in the public eye, has its pros and its cons. You do have to measure your words a little bit more, but you know me, I'm pretty thoughtful. I'm very intentional about what I say. I always want to make sure I'm speaking good and impact into other people's lives. So It's really just about knowing that, what you say, everyone's paying attention to. And I represented 350,000 people that were counting on me to say and do the right thing every day.
I did not enjoy it. I felt like it was an impediment to getting things done because that was not the world in which I lived. And I just always marveled that the state legislature and, they're going to pass something down to us on the local level, but they don't have to abide by it. And then the federal folks, they just can have any kind of meetings they want. It just always amazes me as, pass the laws that you want to live by, that you want to stick down our throat. So
Sure, totally understand.
Todd's podcast is sponsored in part by Saunders Ralston Dantzler Real Estate. Since 1996, the firm has offered unrivaled brokerage services throughout Florida, Georgia, and Alabama. With over 90 expert advisors throughout the region, our team has the knowledge and resources to help clients realize their most ambitious real estate investment goals. When you choose SVN, Saunders Ralston Dantzler Real Estate, you have access to a diverse suite of commercial and land services, including forestry consulting, land management, auctions, property management, commercial leasing, and negotiating conservation easements. If you're seeking to invest in land or explore commercial real estate opportunities in the Southeast, contact us today at svnsaunders.com or call 877-518-5263 to connect with an advisor today.
one of your jobs as the president of Florida Realtors is identifying leaders that are going to come up next. What do you look for? I mean, to me, that was my biggest job, is who's going to be president in 5 years?
Yep.
How do I make sure that guy or that gal is in the line and has the technical skills? How do you identify those potential leaders? How do you nurture them? How do you train them? You know, and to take that person that's kind of maybe a little rough around the edges, and you shine them up a little bit and you get them in the right spots, or hey, this person's a rock star and they're going to be there no matter what. I need to spend more time with this guy or this gal. This one's kind of on their own self-propelled path.
Yeah, so you may know I, for 20-something years, have done a lot of coaching and leadership development work. So I work for governments, associations, corporations, you name it. So I've identified what I call the 4 C's of leadership: their character, their competency, courage, and commitment. And so for me, the first thing, and I always tell people too in my companies, I hire for character first, competency second. I always say I can teach you to understand how to do the functions and tasks that need to happen as long as you have a certain amount of aptitude. But teaching you to be a good person is a little bit harder. I can model it for you. I can expect it from you. So I look for character first. So I'm always looking and saying, okay, who in our case in the association is really displaying the character that I believe is the right type of character to lead? And so I'm looking at that first. The second thing is I'm someone who truly respects competency. And so I'm looking to say, who's asking the right questions, who's pushing us in the right direction, who's challenging things in the right way, which then goes to the courage piece, because you know that you can have great character and you can have competency, but if you don't have the courage to actually follow through and stand up and stand in the middle of the room and debate and argue even against, a past president, whoever it may be, then what good are you and what are you going to accomplish? And the last part of that is the commitment piece. It's great to have the other 3, but if you're not going to follow through, then what good is it? It's just going to fail. So for me, there's that. I've been very intentional. I know that Chuck and I are become very, very good friends.
Chucky B, your intern.
Chucky B. That's
Chucky
it.
B, your
That's
intern.
It. Yeah, he's going to love you calling him my intern, by the way. I'm going to adopt that now going forward. Chuck is now my intern. But Chuck's a great example. I mean, he brings his own talent, skill to the table. But when you think about how did I start looking at how am I going to build leaders, I've invested heavily in the leadership team that's working with me in 2025, and I will continue to.
Right.
So I said to Chuck very first, I said, Chuck, my number one goal in 2025 is to make sure that I set you up to be a better president than I am in 2026. And I expect you to do the exact same in this case for George, now Jeff, and if Cindy continues to move through, which we expect she will. So with that, for me, there's that piece. And then it is that idea of looking around the association and saying, who are the people that I personally think are the right people to take the helm? And take the helm doesn't mean of the association. It could be of a committee, it could be of a task force, could be of a POG or a PAG or whatever it may be. So I'm looking for those. It could
be of their church. It could be of their volunteer organization.
100%.
Leadership development doesn't just mean for realtors. It is for society in general.
Yeah, you're preaching my gospel there. We agree.
I feel like we just got a brief glimpse into what your acceptance speech is going to be in a couple of weeks with your 4 C's. We'll see.
Maybe. My speech so far is Todd is amazing, and we're so
I think you
honored.
can stop right there.
Okay, yeah, that's it. Done. It's the shortest speech ever.
Yeah. But I think one of the great things that, identifying these leaders as you and your leadership team go around the state talking to different realtor organizations is you have a chance to meet the people that may not have the opportunity to come to the state association meetings, but you meet them on their turf and you see how they interact with their people and those that they're comfortable with. And that was one of the valuable things I felt, that how I was discovered. R.J. Collins, he was a big proponent of me and helped me along. And that's what I try to do with other people, is you don't just see them at the Florida Realtor meetings. You see them when you go to their local associations or wherever it may be.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'm not trying to be nice to you. You are one of the presidents that I have looked up to and I've admired. Andrew Barber is another one.
Yep.
Andrew is really good about identifying and helping support me. There's a number of them. I won't do a whole laundry list, but there are a handful of leaders that over time that I know have been instrumental in helping me navigate Florida Realtors and ultimately become the president. You don't get there on your own. And so now my job and my task and my honor is to try to do the same thing for those members, to your point, that I meet and see not only at state meetings, but also in and around the state as I'm walking around and going to different associations.
Well, you're very kind to me, and I appreciate that. You certainly don't need to say that. But so a lot of times people interchange the word realtor and a licensee or realtor.
Yeah.
Just kind of, it really bugs me when our fellow brethren and sisterin say realtor.
Yeah,
but
well, they
realtor.
probably go to a docator too.
That's right. There's only 2 syllables in this world, in the word. But what's the difference between a realtor and a licensee?
Yeah, I mean, and obviously I know you know the answer, but the most basic answer to that is that they belong to the association. But beyond that, it's what does that mean to belong to the association? We'll start with the obvious, which is what they agree to, ascribe to, and live up to, a code of ethics.
Correct.
That they believe that I'm not just going to meet the minimum letter of the law, but that I'm going to live and operate as a professional in the marketplace in a way that really models a level of ethical behavior, not only to how I interface and interact with my peers, but how I engage and serve the community as a whole. I also know that the realtor brand is synonymous with professionalism. And the idea that realtors are always looking to make sure that they're getting better, improving, and pursuing a higher level of knowledge so they can be more effective. And then the last thing, I know you and I agree on this, or I assume we do anyway, is when you're a realtor, you're an advocacy champion. You understand more so than anyone else, maybe in the marketplace, that the work that we do to protect private property rights, advance a business-friendly environment, support the goal, ideal, and dream of homeownership is ever present. And one of the big things that I focus on too in the advocacy space, so you know, is that, as you know, as you know, what you do every single day is being a realtor and being in real estate is not residential. It's all aspects of real estate. So what I say is, and when we say we're the voice of real estate in Florida, I say all real estate. So that means commercial practitioners, residential, management, investors, so on. Everything that touches real estate is our responsibility. And when you're a realtor, you understand that you are part of the official voice for real estate, leading and shaping what's happening in our state and across our country.
I want to come back and talk about advocacy in a few minutes.
Sure.
But one of the reasons why I really wanted you here to start the year off is to talk about the NAR settlement.
Sure.
And the lawsuit that was happened. It was going on last year, finally got settled. I had thought about having Gia on last year, but it was just it wasn't quite ripe for discussion, I think. And then, she kind of rotated out. So you get it.
Got it.
Tell us a little bit about the lawsuit, or what you can, how it affects us as realtors.
Sure.
And does it do anything for the public?
Well, so I'll say this. I mean, Tim Weisheyer's opinion is that I think the lawsuit was problematic in and of itself, the framework of it and the principle that it was pursuing. Nonetheless, it is what it is, and it's the law that we live under now, and that's okay, and we embrace it and we move forward. One of the things, kind of tying together the last question about being a realtor, one of the things that realtors are good at are adapting. And so as the lawsuit is rolled out, and it means that the way that communication around commissions, compensation, or cooperating with other brokers is going to take place as opposed to through the MLS, which is what we've been used to, it means that the marketplace is having to shift and adjust. What I've told people all the way through is that it's new to the residential market, but what we've always done in the commercial market. And I know you and I have talked about that in the past. So right now, it's really a function of updating forms and documents, making sure that the forms library that Florida Realtors develops for their members is there, which we've done a tremendous amount of work with. And then it's going to be just informing the marketplace. These are your options when it comes to commissions, compensation, or other agreements that come into play. And then it's just going to take, in truth, probably another 6, 8, 10 months for the marketplace to really settle into what does this really look like. Is it going to help consumers? Some would say yes, some would say no. The truth of it is, it's really about communicating value. And so for me, I have no problem ever walking in and justifying any form of compensation that I'm earning in any deal or partnership or transaction that I'm a part of, because I know how to communicate my value. And so now my job as president of the association is to help our members understand, with the framework changing just a little bit, how do they effectively communicate their value to the marketplace? It's there, and the consumer absolutely knows it and understands it. Every survey result out there says consumers still understand the power and the importance of having an advocate, a realtor by their side to help them with the most important and most expensive, many times, transactions of their life. So it's just going to be a matter of helping people understand how to communicate.
I do think the brokerage community the residential brokerage community will absorb it. They will adjust, as we always do. Back when I was president, we were dealing with agency. That was a big thing. Are you a single agent? You're a transaction broker? You a buyer's broker? I mean, it was years and years of fighting within our own organization, because you have different people that act different ways in representing different clients. So, that was our struggle back then. And once we finally settled, everyone just adjusted to it. So it's the frustration part, I think, as much as anything. And I hope that our residential folks will absorb it. They will educate themselves, and they will get to where, okay, I can deal with this, and it's not the end of the world.
I agree. Let me just say this. People think about it as a disruption, and I don't. I say all the time, like, you think about technology and people are like, oh my goodness, what's happening in technology? It's a disruption. I'm like, wait a second. You do realize that your pager was technology, fax machine was technology, electronic lockboxes was technology. The change in what we're going through now, to your point, is just one more change, and the professionals will adapt to it. They will adjust how they work and how they communicate, and I don't think this is going to be anything that's overly dramatic that's going to hurt the profession whatsoever.
I agree. Redfin, Zillow, Realtor.com, how are they affecting our business model? And I've got my own opinions, but I want to hear yours about what we've given up.
Yeah. So first of all, I mean, if you go back to the origins of data, I think we've given up too much, and I think we did it a long time ago.
That was our stock and trade.
Yeah. The horse left the barn on that a long time ago. So that's a whole different conversation. In fact, I remember I was on the governing board for a very large MLS for a number of years, and there was three different companies that were asking for data from the MLS. And the board was looking at, okay, well, what do we do with it? One organization said, give it to us for free. We're part of the family. Another organization said, we'll pay you a nominal fee. And another organization seemed like they were paying a large fee. And everybody's like, oh, this is great. I said, wait a second. How much is the data worth that you're giving away for this fee, whatever it is? Call it any number you want. And they were like, yeah, but they're paying us more than anybody else. I said, but what if they're not paying you what it's really worth? Right. I said, you guys, how many of you guys would sell anything in your life, let alone a piece of real estate, without first valuing what it is you're selling? They were all like, well, none of us would. And I said, well, why would you do it with this data? That said, we live in a data-driven economy. I think to that point, we've given away too much. And that's not even a realtor thing. That's a real estate broker thing. We're the ones that create the data in the first place. We're the ones that technically own the data. And we pay to put it in place and fly drones and take pictures and do virtual tours. So that said, how are those companies impacting us? I think in truth, they've just taken the information that you and I have created. They've placed it on a pretty portal that people can get to.
And they sell it back to us.
They try to. I won't buy it. But nonetheless, now what I think really it comes down to is it's just like everything with information. It's out there, but people don't necessarily always know how to interpret it. So for us, it's fine. You can log into any third-party portal and you can access information on real estate. But what does it really mean? How do you look at it? And the best way of thinking about that, and I know you know this well, is if I wanted to buy a farm in Southwest Kentucky, I don't know everything about Southwest Kentucky real estate. So I'm going to have to, I can look at it online. I can see all the pictures. I can look at everything I can. At some point, I'm going to have to go in that market, see it, touch it, feel it, and probably work with an expert in that market.
Right.
So now as real estate professionals and practitioners, the data is out there. It's fine. Now our job is to make sure that we are the most knowledgeable on it. We know how to interpret it, and we know how to communicate it effectively to people so they know how to make the best decisions for themselves, their families, or their companies.
Hey everyone, this is Dr. Brad O'Connor, Chief Economist at Florida Realtors, and I would like to encourage you to listen to Todd's podcast. Each episode features great conversations with new and exciting guests, like myself. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe to Todd's podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
You mentioned the commercial brokerage and the fees and everything. How does the Florida Realtors convince our independent and commercial brokerages to come into the fold and to become realtor members? Because a lot of them say, I don't need them.
Right.
I, in fact, think that you do for the advocacy, the political advocacy, if nothing else.
Sure.
How do you make that case to the independent guy or gal or the other national company that's not really, they don't push their folks to be part of the threefold agreement?
Yeah, so
three-party agreement, excuse me.
Yeah, I just had lunch with the managing director of a very large commercial brokerage in Central Florida, and we had this conversation. And I said, I really would like for your company to be a part of what we're doing. And I said, the truth of it is we are tied together. You just may not fully see it. Now, this individual also happens to be elected. He understands advocacy well. But as I started walking through with him, he said, Tim, I would love to be a part of the association. I don't have any problem with that. He goes, I just haven't been able to figure out the value proposition. I said, well, that's why we're sitting together. So my answer to the question is this. First of all, it starts with us understanding that what happens in commercial real estate impacts residential and vice versa. The second part of it becomes us doing a better job of communicating to the commercial marketplace that the things that we're working on directly benefit them, even if it touches residential, by the way.
Right.
But certainly the things that we're doing with taxation, fees, impact fees, and even the work we were doing, the not local business tax, excuse me, the BRT, the business tax reduction we were working on for sales tax on commercial leases. I'll use that just as an example. I was at a conference, a commercial real estate conference, and people were there talking about all the great work that they were doing to actually work on the elimination of the business rent tax. And I'm like, wait a second, that's not been you, that's been our team over here. I know because I've been in the room since day one actually working on this. And so you start thinking about that. We need to do a better job of owning and telling our story and our narrative and getting the practitioners to understand that Florida Realtors, national Realtors, or your local, whoever it may be, really are the ones that helping create the marketplace for you. And we're all so much better and so much stronger when we come together. There's a strong emphasis right now from this leadership team. This has been a priority of mine. I built out a 5-year roadmap to increase what we do in commercial real estate within the Realtor organization. The leadership team is 100% on board with it. And so we've started to get more engaged in that work and becoming very intentional about saying, how do we start engaging commercial practitioners, letting them know that we're here and we want to provide tools and data and services to them that are going to help them succeed. And then most importantly, I think once they understand the strength and the power and the opportunity tied to what we do in the advocacy space, I think that becomes a no-brainer. And now that this conversation around decoupling commissions and MLSs and all those things are taking place, it really almost makes that world very natural for them to come in and fit into a little bit more so than they would have done in the past.
I think, and I've made this argument since COVID, is the Florida Realtor leadership team went and argued to the governor, to the state, as, hey, we are an essential service. We've got to stay open.
Yep.
And if there's a realtor in this state that doesn't think they owe a big part of their income for the last 3 or 4 years to the efforts that the Florida Realtor leadership team and management team and legislative team fought for us, they're crazy. All you got to do is talk to a broker from California or from some of the blue states.
Pennsylvania,
and say, ask them how they kept their office open.
Yep.
We had, the first year of COVID was tough. We sent everyone home like everybody else did. And we built this building during COVID, and we moved in January of 21, I think. And, there was times when the contractor, hey, our drywall guys are out sick because they got COVID, or the plumbers are out. There was delays. We worked around it. But to me, that was the single most important thing that the Florida Realtors have done in the last 15 or 20 years, just my opinion,
Yep.
to keep us viable, to keep us in the middle of the deal, in the center of the deal, and to keep our offices open.
Right.
And if someone needs an argument, why should I be a realtor? That's the first thing I do, because you never close your doors.
Yeah, and it's like anything in life, right? We take our health for granted until it's at risk, right? You can go down any example. And I think, unfortunately, because Florida Realtors was so successful in navigating that process and working with the governor's office to deem everything that we're involved in as essential in the state so we didn't have to stop, people didn't realize the full risk of what was ahead of them. So I do all this strategic planning for associations all around the country, and I talk to them about, I use Pennsylvania normally as the example. In Pennsylvania, realtors or real estate practitioners or licensees could not work whatsoever for months and months and months. And so when I start telling that story, people go, really? And I'm like, yeah, you're taking for granted, just like you maybe take for granted your health, you're taking for granted the benefit that you have because Florida Realtors is working on your behalf every single day, whether you're paying attention to it or not. By the way, you talk about COVID and building this. Guess what I was doing during COVID? I was president of the Florida School Boards Association, having to figure out what to do with 3 million students and 67 school boards in the state of Florida. So that was a lot of fun for me. While you were building your building, I was on the education side trying to figure that whole space out. And how do you take 3 million students and move them to virtual education and then hybrid education and then back in the brick and mortar classroom? So it was quite fun.
When did you rotate off the school board? 22?
2020.
So you had two 4-year terms?
Yeah, which was just a personal choice. I wasn't term limited out. I'm a believer in term limits, I'll say that. But for me, I self-imposed a term limit on myself. When I decided with my family that I was going to run, I said, I'll run. If I'm fortunate enough to be elected, I'll serve for 8 years. If I can't get done in 8 years what I think needs to be done, then maybe I'm not the right person for the job anyway. I think serving 12 years is fine if I were being honest, but 8 to 12 is probably the right thing. I'm not a fan of lifetime politicians. I'm not a fan of people identifying their whole identity. Like for me, I say all the time, 2025, for some, I'm President Tim Weisheyer. The truth of it is, I'm always just Tim. I'm Jack and Kathy's son. I'm Courtney and Christina's dad, and nothing else really matters. So when you get caught up in this idea of being in politics in perpetuity, I think it's dangerous. I don't think it's healthy. And I think, unfortunately, people's entire identity gets wrapped up in their political position, and they no longer are thinking about decision-making and impact. They're thinking about personal perseverance. So,
well, I used to say if Commissioner's not going to be on my tombstone, I hope he was a good dad.
Yep.
And if this is the highest pinnacle of your life, being an elected official, you need to be electing more successful people.
Amen.
And I've got friends that are lifetime politicians. I'm close to them, but I still think that you should have to go back and operate in the world in which the rules and regulations that you created and voted on, you should have to live in them.
Yeah, we agree.
And we had 2 4-year term limits when I was elected, and they put you could do one more term the year I got out. I am a big believer in term limits now because I would have been there probably for another 4 years, and 8 was plenty for me. I was a horse smell in the barn the last 6 months. I was ready to get out and get back into doing this. So
yeah, I agree. And look, everyone thought when I was finishing up my school board role, everyone thought I was running for office somewhere. They were like, he's running for county commission, he's running for the legislature. The rumors were rampant. The truth of it is, I was never running for anything.
Right.
I always knew I was doing this work. I also had made a commitment. If you think about the timing you asked when I came off, you said at the beginning, I was elected to Florida Realtors and went on in 2020. I also made a very conscious choice not to pursue anything else politically, to invest in the association and the profession that's given so much to me and my family.
It's your time to give back.
Yeah, so here I am doing this work, and I may never serve in public office again, and I'm perfectly fine with that. If I feel led or called to be, then I will, but it's not something I wake up thinking about or dreaming about.
So AI is starting to be the buzzword around. It's been around for a while, but it's really starting to come to the forefront. What impact do you think AI is going to have on our business? I mean, I'm not a big fan of it so far.
Sure.
It's just my personal old school thinking.
Right.
What's your feeling on AI?
Yeah, how'd you feel about cell phones and computers? So we should probably start there. I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding. I think
You mean
that's
this flip phone I have here?
Exactly.
No,
Yeah. I can see your Motorola over there, or your Palm Pilot. But I think AI is going to be similar to that. I mean, look, it's interesting, and I'll say from a human standpoint, the speed at which technology is developing is a little scary in some ways, right? You start thinking about that. But beyond that, it is what it is. It's the world we live in. Specific to real estate, I think what it's really going to do is just create efficiencies. People are going to learn how to use it in a way to get done something that would have taken them 45 minutes to write out or think through, to get some framework down on paper. And then hopefully my desire would be that then it's still personalized and customized, and you're not just having computer generated communications happening across the board. We're leveraging AI in a number of our companies. My consulting firm uses it. I mentioned earlier, I'm a partner in another real estate brokerage that I hadn't mentioned earlier, which is Avanti Way Realty, which is really leveraging technology and built a very strong tech stack integrated inside the ecosystem of the company. We're leveraging AI to use data to help drive efficiencies and processes and aggregate as much information as possible for our agents. That company has about 2,200 realtors across the state that we're supporting and working with. So I think AI, first of all, it's not going to go away. It's going to become just like a Google search or a Bing search or a DuckDuckGo, whatever we use now. And then I think the question is going to be, what are going to be the limitations of it? In our business, I 100% believe it's still a people business. And so data, information, speed, and efficiency, technology, and innovation are going to be there. We have to lean into it. If we do not embrace innovation, we will die, whatever industry we're in, whatever association we're in. So we have to lean into that and embrace it. But we also then have to understand what are the limitations of it. And there are limitations because people still need the human element to come into play to communicate. How do you really work through this in the most effective way?
Right. I remember one of the podcasts that I did, I can't remember who our guest was, is I was struggling to come up with some questions. I don't know whether Eli's the most eligible bachelor in all of Polk County. I don't know if you knew that or not.
No, but I'm glad to know. Congratulations,
yeah,
Eli.
So lock up your women when Eli's out.
That's right.
I can't remember if it was Eli or someone else said, why don't you AI some questions? And I did it, and they didn't really come up with much different than what I had. They gave me some ideas, and then I put it in my own words. My fear is if we just rely on AI and we don't put it in our own words, why do I need someone else to be doing that? If someone's hiring me to write the copy because of my knowledge, why would I turn that responsibility over to a computer? So,
yeah,
that and again, I cannot remember what podcast was, but I didn't really gain too much. I might have gotten an idea or two of a question, but I still went back to what I knew and what I know and my life's experiences.
Yeah, so let's make a comparison to this. You think about the AVMs, RVMs, and the automated valuation models that take place. That is just an aggregation of data that spits out a supposed value of a property. However, that formula and that algorithm does not have the knowledge that you or I have in a market to understand, wait a second, it's valuing this based on raw data as this value of home, property, land, building, asset, whatever. But it doesn't know that there's new land uses coming in play, that there's new developments happening, or that it's right behind a landfill or whatever it may be. So I think AI is the same. It's going to spit out the raw data, but it still needs that technical expertise and knowledge that only a human that truly understands that space or that vertical can apply to it. And short of that, I mean, it's useless to me in that way, because it's not real information that's can be monetized or create real value for other people. You still have to personalize it. So it has value. I like it. I'm embracing it, but I still think it's going to just be a tool on our tool belt, and that's it.
You were pulled in a lot of different directions just by what we've talked about so far today, and that's not the other things. I want to talk about a topic called Near Rocks, Far Rocks. Mm-hmm. There's a group I do some consulting with, Two Blue Aces. They're a leadership development and consulting company. And one of the consultants, General Robert Mumbles Palumbo, F-16 pilot, he talks about Near Rocks, Far Rocks is when he's leading a mission, he's got to look at the near rocks as they're going through the mountain ranges and making sure his team does not hit a mountain, but they got to look at the target at the very end where they got to drop their bombs, turn around and get back through there. How do you focus on the day-to-day operations? And I know you may not focus on them like some people might think, because we have professional staff that's incredibly competent. But there is a day-to-day operational component of what you do as the Florida Realtor president. And then also on the membership's long-range goals that you've set, previous presidents have set, and what you're wanting to carry on. How do you kind of deal with all that?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm familiar with the group you were mentioning. I've had the pleasure of meeting Mumbles and those as well and hearing from them. Big fans of them, and obviously incredibly grateful for their work and service for our nation, and the principles that they teach, I think, are just so incredibly solid. Specific to the question, so first of all, I'll start with this. I've always said that I don't believe in presidential projects and priorities and those type of things. I believe in the team. And so for me, I've been building out with the leadership team every single year, where is it that we really need to go? And I've really been taking that idea of saying, what's the long look? If we look forward in 15 or 20 years, where should the association be? And how are we going to continue to be of value to our members, and then work backwards with that to say, okay, well, what are the things that we need to start putting in place today? And my thing has always been, I don't care if it happens in 2025. That's not relevant to me. I want the right thing to happen at the right time. And so we've built out framework. And in fact, when I brought our leadership team through our retreat, one of the things we did in a very comprehensive way was look and say, what are the long-term strategic priorities that we need to be thinking about for the association? And then I've assigned those to different members of the leadership team for them to work on those as well. As far as being able to manage that and being pulled in multiple directions, you are correct. I'm busy. I like being busy, though. I guess that old cliche, if you want something done, give it to a busy person, maybe applies a little bit. But the truth of it is I'm able to manage what I manage because I have so many talented people that support me. I'm very intentional about building out framework. So it's what I'm talented at. It's what I know. I have a natural ability towards it, but I've also a trained ability towards building strategic and business plans and mapping things out. So from a Florida Realtor standpoint, we know exactly what we're working on in 2025. It has been mapped out for the team. Everyone is on board and aligned with it. But what they know is it's not about 25. It's just one more rung on a ladder that we're climbing so that when we get 20 years from now, we can look
or
back.
100, as your intern Chucky B said.
Oh yeah, 100 years. That's it. Yeah. That's my responsibility, is to make sure we're good for 100. But I love that you call him my intern. That's so good.
It's the nicest thing I could think of.
I love you, Chuck. I promise. Anyway, so we're building in that framework to say, we want to look back and know that we made long-term strategic decisions. We didn't react to what's going on. We were intentional and proactive about what we're doing, and that we played this tiny, tiny little part in 2025, 6, 7, 8, whatever it may be, to be a part of it. So it's all in place. I mean, we've built the framework for it, and I'm highly confident in it. In fact, we have our first leadership team meeting coming up on Monday. Right. Everything is mapped out, laid out. I'm very organized as a person, so it's kind of easy for me in some ways.
As president, you're in charge of executing the plan for this year. Mm-hmm. So I do think that, yes, you're right. You build these plans over years and years, and they execute at their own timeline. But it's your turn to execute. Yep. You're steering the ship this year, and I think that, one, it's a great opportunity. It's a great honor to be in charge of this association and to lead it. So I do think that being president this is your year. Next year will be Chuck's year, and his job, I think, this year should be getting everything ready so that when he is asked to be the guy, he's prepared to do it. Right. So I think that's all important. Hey everybody, this is your host Todd Dantzler, and I hope you're enjoying this episode. I would like to take a moment to do a shameless plug for my real estate business. As most of you know, I'm a partner with SVN Saunders Ralston Dantzler Real Estate, but I am also a working broker who is very active in listing and selling real estate. I've been in this business for over 41 years. I know, you're thinking he can't be, he's so young looking, but no, it's true. I've been actively listing and selling commercial real estate my entire working career on properties ranging from ag land to multifamily projects to office and commercial and industrial properties. I have held the distinguished CCIM designation since 1991. This is the highest designation you can achieve in the commercial real estate field. I believe that a big part of my success in the real estate business is because of the relationships that I have fostered throughout the state of Florida and also right here in Polk County. So if you have any real estate needs in buying or selling, please give me a call to see if I can help out. My direct line to my desk is 863-877-2846. Again, that's 863-877-2846. What challenges do you see on the horizon for us How do we stay integral? I know we talked a little bit about AI. We talked about being the center of the deal and advocacy and some of that. How do you see us evolving?
Is that as professionals or as an association?
Probably as an association.
Sure.
And professionals to a degree. The professionals, it's an individual thing, but you're leading the aggregate of us.
Yeah. So thank you for that question, because it truly is important to me. One of the things we're launching in 2025 is what we're generically calling right now broker roundtables. And I think, how do we remain relevant and communicate our value? I think we have to do a better job of engaging the broker community. So often all associations are becoming all things to all people. And that means, in our case, our 240,000 members. But there's a very important component right in the middle of that, which is the broker community, which if the brokerage community does not feel like their voices are heard, or that we're actually looking out for their overall well-being, and that we're supporting their ability to be profitable as a company, all that means is that they struggle. If they struggle, it means the agent struggles, which means that we're just putting more stress on the system. So we are hyper-focused right now on making sure we meet with and engage with our brokers. It's even more so probably important when you think about what's been going on with the lawsuit and the settlement and kind of settling in around that. But the truth of it is, this is something I've been talking about and preaching for a very long time, is that if we don't engage the broker community, we are missing one of the most important key stakeholders of this entire ecosystem. And so we are leaning heavily into that.
They've got the institutional knowledge.
They do. And the truth of it is, I mean, you think about this whole process. We can talk, you said it earlier, about Florida Association has grown to over 240,000 members. It's not because you're dynamic or I'm dynamic or anyone else is. It's because people have been moving to the state, and people have realized that a career in real estate may be something that's appealing or possibly even profitable to them. But with that growth, I think what's happened is we've failed sometimes to realize that the reason that we have 240,000+ members is because brokers have been saying to their agents, hey, you're joining your local association, you're joining your state association. Well, that's the key link. And so if we don't understand who our true customer really is, and we don't meet them at their place of need and communicate our value to them, those customers are going to start saying, well, do I really need to buy your product, tool, or service, which in our case is an association or an aggregate and a voice for the collective of real estate. So I think that's going to be important. I think that's one of the bigger challenges we have right now, is meeting with the brokerage community, hearing from them, and understanding what is it they need. You and I are both brokers, so we can speak to that ourselves. But the truth of it is, I don't want to stand in a mirror and tell myself what the association needs. I want to hear from the other thousands of brokers in the state, so I can understand what are they dealing with in their market, and what does their business model need from an association like ours, not just as what does my business model or your business model need.
You had mentioned we can't be all things to all people, and I wholeheartedly agree with that. And sometimes I think we start reflecting the culture in which we live. We begin to advocate for things that aren't necessarily business related. My opinion, the only thing that Florida Realtors should be doing, and national realtors and the local association, we should be advocating for the business side of what we do.
We agree.
We don't need to be on the social side and advocating for X, Y, or Z. If you want to do that, join the X, Y, or Z club or be associated with these. We are associated as a business entity. We're a professional business entity, and that's what we should be focusing on. So hopefully our efforts, especially on the national level, will kind of refocus and start saying, hey, how do I help my clients make better business decisions, make more money, be better at what they do?
Yeah, I fully agree. And I tell all the time, and anyone on the management team or the leadership team or any member that's been around me and heard me speak knows that I talk about profitability and productivity. If we're not focusing on that, and we're not making sure our initiatives are supporting the business side of what it is our members need, none of us joined this association because we needed new friends, we needed a new social club, or we needed somewhere just to hang out. We joined because we believe this association was going to support our business succeed. And that business is whether you're an independent agent and an LLC or brokerage or a conglomerate, doesn't matter. That's why you've joined. I'll use this example to make the point and just kind of put a pin in what you said. When I was involved in education policy, I was on the delegate body for the National School Board Association, which is in serious trouble right now. And what was happening is it's an education institution, and they were supposed to be advocating as the voice of education in the United States. And I would go to delegate meeting after delegate meeting, and they'd be talking about the separation of children and families at the border. They'd be talking about gun control. They'd be talking about the environment and climate change and all these things. And they were so focused on pushing those things forward. And as the voice for Florida education at the time, I would go and say, listen, I can't go back to Florida and continue to ask my state to be a part of this organization because you guys aren't even focused on the core issues.
Right.
And so to your point, I think the National Association, Florida, and certainly local associations need to remember that if I want to be involved in environmental work, I can join an environmental organization. Right. I want to be involved in social good or social services or whatever. That's
called mission creep.
Yeah. I'm hyper-focused on making sure that what we're doing is supporting the success of our members, their businesses, and the impact that they have on the lives of families, communities, and businesses that lean on them for real estate services.
You flatteringly said you Googled all my pictures or something back in the day.
Yeah.
In preparing for this, I Googled, your bio, and it was 2.5 pages long. I sent it to Eli. I said, you can't really be thinking that you can go through 2 pages of introduction. I said, no. This is just background for when I'm developing the program. But you do so much. You are very, very busy. How do you idle?
Yeah.
How do you put it in neutral, or can you?
Sure.
I saw where you bungee jump. You've been a race car driver. Where did you go to race car driving school? I did Skip Barber.
Well, no, I didn't go to race car driving school, but
you just drive like a maniac down 192.
I would never admit that. No, I was fortunate enough years ago to be able to get in some of the NASCARs and drive around and ride in them and do that, and then go out to the Andretti track and some of those things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you bungee jump?
I have. Haven't done it in a while. Skydiving's next for me. Not that you asked that, but that is something I've always wanted to do. My family always said, no, you can't. You have little daughters. What if you die? My daughters are adults now, so I'll be skydiving.
Grandchildren.
I do. I have grandkids, so
they're taken care of.
Yeah. So the answer to your question is, how do I idle? It's I love nature. Is the simple truth. So. Back years ago, I used to go on a lot of cruises, and that was my way of disconnecting. I can turn off my phone and kind of idle that way. We'd do 3, 4, 5 cruises a year just to kind of settle down as a family. We don't do that as much anymore. Of course, people think, well, if you're on a cruise, you're still available now because the internet's everywhere. So that doesn't work. My true way is my faith is very important to me. Worshiping and just kind of taking pause and reflecting, reading scripture and praying is important. Beyond that, nature. So I love fishing. I love hunting. I love hiking. I love anything outdoors. I like 4-wheel driving, going overlanding and rock crawling and those type of things. I grew up surfing and wakeboarding, so if I can be at a beach somewhere, I'm happy. I am intentional about it. I certainly do have to force myself sometimes because I am a natural thinker. Right. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm always looking at what am I going to invest in next. But
isn't that a great mindset to have? Is always be thinking like that.
Yeah.
I love being an entrepreneur.
And
I've tried stuff that's failed miserably. I've tried stuff that's been wildly successful, and it's no fun to fail.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's pretty expensive to fail. But I've enjoyed that part of my life and my chemical makeup.
I do as well. I just was with my parents the other night, and my mom and I were talking about that very thing. And she's like, this has just been you since the time you were a kid.
Is your brother like that? I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're fine. Somewhat. My brother runs restaurants all across the U.S. My sister ran resorts all across the country. And so they're more corporate America than they are entrepreneur. In fact, I've said to them many times, like, why don't we just develop and own all these hotels and restaurants? And my brother's line, which I love, he said, Tim, I work so much now. If I owned it all, I would kill myself.
That's right.
Like, I would never stop working.
Yeah.
They have a very dogged work ethic, just like I do, which was instilled from my grandparents and certainly my parents as well. So, but I do idle. I do have to force it sometimes, to be honest, because I have so much going on and my mind is always going. But the best thing for me is put me around a campfire with friends, put me in a deer stand, or put me somewhere on a boat where I can drop a line and just have fun and listen to good music with people I love the most. I'm happy.
What kind of music do you like?
Mostly country. I grew up listening to, obviously, I'm 49 years old, so I grew up listening to a lot of the rock and stuff like that when I was a kid. I love Christian music. I love what it does for my soul, the way it inspires me. It reminds me of who I am and who I'm not, meaning a child of God, but yet also humble in who I am every single day. But country music is what I listen to the most.
Where do you like to go to eat? What's your favorite type of food?
Well, I always tell people there's 3 food groups: steak, barbecue, and pizza. But the truth of it is steak and barbecue at the top. If you ask me any day, what do you want to eat? It's always going to be a really good steak or some really, really, really good barbecue.
Good. I want to hang out with you a lot more this year then when it's dinner time.
I am all in.
You'll really enjoy being a past president next year too.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a good club. Just kind of wrapping it up, our midwinter meetings for the Florida Realtors are coming up in a week or so.
Sure.
What can the attendees look forward to? Is it motivational? Is it inspirational? Is it business? What do you see? What are your goals for the meeting? What to come out of that?
Yeah, so we are going to have conversations around innovation and the importance of that going forward, and how do we move our association to the next level of making sure that we're looking at the products, tools, and services that we're investing in or bringing into our portfolio as an association for the benefit and profitability of our members. We are bringing in Donald Miller, who's the author of Story Brand, to speak to all of our members about how do they effectively communicate their value. I was very intentional with bringing Donald in for a couple of reasons. Number one, he's a New York Times bestselling author and one of the most renowned voices on how to actually communicate your value in everything you do. I think the association has to make sure that we're leaning in how to communicate our value to the members, but I think our members need to have a good opportunity to be taught even more how do they communicate their value to the marketplace. So you'll see a lot of that taking place. The other reason I brought him in is I'm a nationally certified coach and business planner for organizations, and I've worked with Donald Miller's group, so I know firsthand just how incredibly effective they are. So that'll happen right in context with our economic summit that Dr. Brad O'Connor will be hosting. Beyond that, you'll hear a lot of conversation. Our theme for the year is Champions for the American Dream. And that is just embedded in who I am and what I believe in. So you hear a lot of conversation about the fact that what we do is not just sell real estate or not just lead an association of people, is that we are literally on the front lines making sure that we uphold this beautiful republic that we've been entrusted with, that is only held together by the freedoms that we have and the opportunities that we create. And I truly believe that real estate and ownership of real estate is right at the center and the core of that. And so you hear a lot of conversation happening about we're more than just realtors or real estate practitioners. We are leading change and creating opportunity for economic well-being for our country in the future. And I really want our members to understand that's who they really are and that's what they really do.
That's about all I have. I can't thank you enough for taking an hour to speak to us, plus probably an hour and a half to get here, an hour and a half to go home. I know you've got some other business here in Lakeland. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you had hoped I would, or are there any topics that you really kind of wanted to talk about that I neglected to ask?
Yeah, so you have a lot of stories about Chuck. So maybe we could just
Intern Chucky B?
Intern Chucky B. Maybe we could spend some time just talking about that. No, do not do that.
His father was a great man.
I know.
Passed way too soon.
I agree.
I was a big fan of his dad.
Yeah, I love hearing all the stories about his father. I got to know him more from afar than personally, but we agree. And I know Chuck works really hard to honor him and his legacy.
Absolutely. His dad's, I'm sure, quite proud of
There's
Chuck
no question.
and the
Chuck's a
family that he's
phenomenal
created.
human being.
Yep.
Yeah. So no, the answer is no. I'll say this. I'm grateful to be here. I know I said it to you before we went on air and maybe a little bit in the beginning. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your friendship. Thank you for allowing me to call you a friend over the years. And I mean that sincerely. There are just so many people, meaning a limited number, that you can look at in life and go, I really admire, or respect that person. And I'm not saying it because I'm here. You've always been one of those for me. You're not the only one, by the way.
I'm just the best one.
There you go. That's a great Todd line, but you are one of them, and I love you and I appreciate you and I thank you.
You're very kind, and I appreciate you doing that. I look forward to working with you and for you this year as our president. If you need anything, I'm a phone call away, and you've been gracious and put me on a couple of committees that I look forward to serving on. Thank you again. It's been a great podcast. I've enjoyed it. Whether you're a realtor or not, hopefully you will have gotten something out of how Tim's approach to leadership is and how you can translate that into your own business or your own company. So thank you again for coming in. And with that, I want to thank y'all for listening to this episode of Todd's podcast. And I hope you will join us next time when we talk about bees. Hey, everybody, I want to thank you for listening to Todd's podcast. This has been your host, Todd Dantzler. If you enjoyed today's episode of Todd's podcast, I hope you'll tune in next time where we talk to Robbie Bell. He is a leader in the honeybee business. We talk about challenges, the ability to continue to raise honey, the importance of honeybees in our agricultural society, and the importance of just what they do for us. So tune in next time for our episode with Robbie Bell. As always, don't forget to rate, review, follow, and subscribe to Todd's podcast on your favorite podcast app. If you have any questions for me or any suggestions for future guests, please call or text our number at 863-288-0944 or visit todddantzler.com. Again, that's 863-288-0944 or visit my website, todddantzler.com. I look forward to hearing your questions and feedback, and please take care.